Recently, EY, Ernst & Young, conducted their Mobility Reimagined survey, and the live in-person conference will take place inside EY's Global Center in Hoboken, New Jersey, just across from Wall Street, on May 29. Looking forward to it. This event will be the number 2 in a series with EY as host facilitator, and I'm certainly grateful. So the workshop on May 29 will bring together corporate and service providers and some educators and other specialists in the industry connected with HR and business management, and of course, the talent mobility and everything related to talent acquisition, assessment, onboarding, training, development, learning, and mobility. So the EY survey revealed some very interesting things, and we're going to talk about it for sure throughout the May 29 live in-person event inside EY. And today is a news briefing, bringing together some of the players and others who are interested. So very interesting time right now. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi, we're back, and here is Dr. Ken Oehler and also author Stephen Howard. Ken, recently your CEO, the CEO of Radical, spoke at an important meeting about people and personalities and the coming of tech, AI, and I didn't record that, but I watched the replay of it. Found it really interesting.
Yeah, good to hear. I actually did. I've seen several of um, his sessions. I wasn't particularly in tune with that one, but I don't. T Tell me what jumped out about it to you.
Yeah, it's a few days ago now, and my head is clouded with other useless stuff. It was about the role of personalities, people personalities, and how that impacts decision making and also learning.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, we're really focused on really understanding people at work and helping them understand themselves and other people that they're working with and personality. We just completed some personality research um, that's showing some really interesting correlations between the big five model of personality, if you know that, and some things like preferences for remote work, preferences for communicating digitally versus face-to-face, preferences for
Hmm.
how you want to communicate, if you want to be a leader or you want to be on a leaderless team. And then also the ability to form and maintain important relationships with work. And I mean, one of the big things, and it's in the personality research, if you know it, in at least in work, there's so much attention on the concept of conscientiousness. Are you a rule follower? Are you a planner? Are you diligent about things? And that as a strong predictor of performance. And we found that, although at the same time we found some interesting relationships between things like agreeableness. Are you more collaborative in nature versus individualistic? Are you emotionally regulated? Are you optimistic versus pessimistic? And those things actually have a pretty big impact, along with conscientiousness, on the ability to maintain and form the trusted relationships that you need at work, and not just of your immediate team, but of like cross-functional partners and executive leaders that might be a little bit more distant from you. So and all these insights, I mean, what we're working on is helping helping people to understand these things about themselves, but then also about the people that they're working with.
Interesting. Stephen Howard is an author of, I said, 22 books on leadership, and the most recent one, Humany, Humony, has just zoomed. It's just caught on. So, Stephen, you're working on this new book with Ali, and this is all about how people outside the U.S. can learn more about doing business with people in the U.S. Is that right?
Yes, yes. It's all about how to partner successfully with American firms and American business people. And to make it a little fun, we added up roughly 100 idioms, American idioms, which people outside the United States just don't understand. Things like Monday morning quarterback or throw somebody under the bus or things of that nature. So the book is coming out in first half of June.
Oh, that's great. Great. Why don't you just briefly describe about the book and the leadership training that you're doing under the idea of humany?
Well, human is a word I coined to add combined humanity, and harmony. Started this, or actually wrote it during the pandemic, thinking about how leadership has to change coming out of the pandemic. Many of the old school ways of leadership are no longer applicable. Um, and the main point of the book, I think, it sums up in the phrase that you manage projects, you manage processes, you manage procedures, you manage policies, you manage things, but you don't manage people. You lead people. And when leaders can change their mindset around that, and yes, there's still 15-20% of the time when you need to manage people, but if you're leading people 75, 80, 85% of the time, you're going to get the sustainable long-term performance that you and your organization want.
Ken, would you like to comment on that?
Um, yeah, I would I agree with that. I mean, I think the things that have been fascinating. I'm also a student of leadership. I don't have 22 books on the topic, but I did some research a few years back on this concept of engaging leaders, and meaning like what are the leaders that are more engaging of people doing differently. And there was this big piece of exactly that about, it's not really about management of people or performance management as maybe we used to think about it in decades past, and things like compassion. And there was this concept of side by side leadership, people that can come alongside almost as a peer, and work collaboratively with the people that they're leading, and that they can energize them around what needs to be done. And then there was all this lots of themes around authenticity. It wasn't necessarily um, as we've heard so much about it in the research of, like, always being yourself or whatever, but there was this piece about just being candid. And on the flip side, that people who are not candid about what's going on, people's BS detectors go up pretty quickly, and that really undermines uh, how effective leaders can be.
Oh, that's interesting. What will be your topic, the main topic for your talk at EY on May 29?
Um, to be honest, I don't know yet. Um,
Well,
I,
I love the authenticity. That's
Yeah.
great.
There's several things I could talk about. I
Well,
mean,
you've
so
got 2 weeks. What the heck?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and the thing I always, like to figure out with the audience and what's going on with the agenda is, we certainly have no shortage of research that I could share. I'm, as I'm a big fan of engaging the audience in activity and
Yep,
getting them working and learning rather than having just,
yep. Yeah, I
listen to
remember you
blah,
did
blah,
that
blah
at the
for an
first
hour.
one.
Um,
Yeah, you did that and recently in New York
yeah,
on Sixth Avenue there. You had everybody involved. Terrific involvement.
yeah. So, I guess my question to you is, I don't know as much about the agenda this time, so I could certainly
Okay.
structure shape some of our research into what the agenda is about, and you come up with some exercises, whether it's design thinking or otherwise, to get people working, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. And I'll get you the link so you could look at the agenda draft that I've published on the website. Recently, Ernst & Young, EY, polled their corporate clients and reach across the world, and they had a huge response. One of the questions that they asked their corporate clients to comment on, I'm reading this, why is the mobility function critical in winning the race for talent and skills?
Mm.
How can better metrics help mobility realize its full strategic and tactical potential? And another question they asked, how can an evolved, agile mobility function help organizations be more resilient? And probably it all goes to the experience of the employee and family. Um, I'm just going to read this because this is the main theme of why people want to get together to talk about these results and what is being transformed and what does all that mean. So EY research identified 5 drivers of evolved mobility functions that can lead to better outcomes. So one of them is called talent linkage. Digital focus is another, flexibility and alignment, and the use of external expertise. The survey revealed that from their corporate contacts responding, mobility functions that focus on 5 drivers are 2.3 times more likely to say mobility helps organizational resilience, and 2.2 times more likely to say mobility improves their sustainability agenda. And further, 1.5 times more likely to say mobility helps address talent shortages. And just about the same response that mobility is more likely to give a measurable ROI, return on investment, in response to talent shortages. They also went on to talk about shrinking budgets for mobility and changing the way they move talent around the world or employ talent who are not going to be in office. 71% of the employers responding said cross-border mobility risks have increased, with 66% of the response saying they expect mobility's scope to increase. 97% of the responders are looking to manage the costs more effectively. So we have a Zoom user, and I don't know who you are. I'm Ed. Would you like to identify yourself?
Am I
Hi.
Sarah? Can you not see me? I have
Oh,
my video on and everything.
yeah,
We
I
see
see.
you.
I see
Can you all
you.
see me in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
leaning
Okay.
over the Coliseum there?
Yeah.
Hi, it's Sara Simonetti with Interconics. I've
Oh,
been
Sarah.
listening. I didn't
Hi
want to
there.
interrupt. I've been listening. Hi, how are
Yeah,
you?
good. It just says Zoom user, it doesn't say your
Oh,
name, and that's why
sorry. I'll fix that.
I
Thank you
was
for letting me
playing with
know.
that. Yeah, and it
Oh, thank you.
and it looks like the Colosseum is upside down. Was there an
It's
earthquake?
I was just holding the phone at a different angle, which gives a whole different perspective. So that's, it's holding it in the palm of my hand facing up. So,
All the tricks of Zoom. So
you
this is
know,
Sara Simonetti. We have actually known each other for a very long time, but we haven't seen each other since pre-COVID, I think.
this is true.
And yet you're
This
going
is
to
true.
show up in person at the EY event. That's terrific. Thank you.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you. Yeah.
You bet. Thank you. And thanks for introducing me to Doug Gallardo. He is coming.
Oh, wonderful.
And I think he's going to join us on this broadcast in a few minutes.
He's a wonderful resource. He has a lot of experience.
Oh, so good to have him back on the trail.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got his new position as vice president with the New York branch of HSBC, the London Global Trade Bank, and
Mm-hmm.
Doug is going to be involved. As you may know, HSBC has graciously hosted my London meetings the past couple of years, and we'll be doing it again in late September, which I'm really grateful about. So the uh, the EY survey, Sarah, will be the main point of the EY portion of the program,
Mm-hmm.
and it's open
Understood.
for everybody to talk about it. You have a unique perspective of dealing as an executive with Interconnects, a global mover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, shipper.
Yes, we are. Yes, international and domestic move management and freight forwarding. Yes.
Right. I'm not going to ask you to divulge secrets or names of clients or anything, but I happen to know that you're very, very successful in dealing with some of the largest companies. And so this EY survey went on to say 95% of their employers who responded, 95% of their corporate customers believe there are more benefits to be derived if they can improve the mobility function internally. And that means more cohesive, according to the survey, more cohesiveness with all the stakeholders doing more in
Mm,
cohesion rather than in an
mm,
individual silos.
mm-hmm,
95% of the employers believe there are more benefits to be received by closely aligning mobility function to the business core
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
throughout,
I agree.
not just a room down the hall and give it to Sarah,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So this and EY has taken this by the horns now, and we're going to make it a headline.
Yeah. I mean, I was having a conversation with Janet Olkowski, who I'm pretty sure you
Oh,
know
yeah, of
pretty
course.
well. And we were just kind of talking, catching up, and this image and idea and concept of it's more, we talk about networking and partnerships and all of this, but it's really like a woven tapestry, right? All these different threads from
Right.
different organizations, different industries that have to be woven together in a certain way, in order to be what it's supposed to be. And so that's kind of how I see it, as you mentioned, not being siloed, but rather, obviously everyone has their function within the organization, but their goals should be aligned and their practices and strategies should be aligned. So absolutely, I look forward to that.
So what came out of the recent London meeting, the headline, one of the headlines was, it was a great meeting, but we'll get into that later. But one of the headlines was that there's a group of mobility services providers who have decided to band together and work as a team in not including tax, but and not including legal, but working to get, well, some aspects of immigration, but
Mm-hmm.
not employment law. Um, one of our top partners and speakers in the London event was a global law firm, and they were right there in the room when they were
Mm-hmm.
talking about all this in London. So they're getting together London-based companies, service providers, to work as a team uh,
Mm-hmm.
and to reduce the clutter, to reduce the contact points bothering the transferee.
Mm-hmm.
There's so
Yeah,
many
I think that's
people, stakeholders, all want to have a piece, but now they're coordinating it or trying
yeah, I
to.
mean, I think all of the new open AI, software that's coming out is going to help make that transition faster and a little easier. Um, at the recent Park Spring conference, Deloitte hosted and they shared and they were talking about AI. And I think the biggest challenge for us is around like privacy and sharing. So I think that for us, if
Uh-huh.
we can get over that challenge of the privacy and the sharing, it would be even easier for us to work together, and to your point, reducing touch points for the transferee, which is it's a big concern because you've got so many things going on at once. The last thing you need is like 11 people to talk to for just your move. You've got
Right.
So many things happening. So I do think that, the AI and the software will support a better experience.
So, so the survey also said 60% of the corporates that
Mhm,
responded to their survey. Now, these are EY corporate clients from across
mhm,
the world, although most of them were American companies. Not all, though. 60% said mobility is still isolated and not integrated across the management leadership.
mhm.
So 99% are tracking the ROI of the mobility programs. That's up from 80% 12 months ago.
Mhm.
That
I think
that
there's one other,
that's dramatic. Right.
yeah, I think there's one other part of the conversation that we talk about here and there, not often enough, I think, is that a lot of the industries and a lot of the functions that support global mobility are taught in education, in university and institutions and, higher education, but global mobility is not. It's something that grew organically out of the need and the practice, and we've all been educating each other within the industry. But if you think about it, none of us have studied this, right? This is not, global mobility is
Right.
not something that you go in for and study about. So I think it's not something that people are aware about unless they're involved, touched by it in some way. So I think
And
that's a little
personal
part of the
experience. Right.
isolation, is because of that. It's not talked about until it's something that's necessary, which is like kind of late.
Well, that's why I've got this name behind me in bold face.
Mm-hmm.
HR business. And what does that mean? Global
Mm-hmm.
business needs mobile talent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then all the services come into that. Okay, so generative technology on that topic, the survey results, 93% of the corporate response, 93% said mobility functions should use more tech, generative AI to some extent. But currently, 22% use it. So there's a gap. That means there's got to be more learning and development, I guess, or teaching.
Yeah, I think it's privacy too. I think we all have come to
Uh-huh.
understand how much we use it in our day-to-day life already, maybe more on the personal side. But I think, again, I think for our industry in specific, I think it's more about even partner companies working together, like the integration process and the protocols for, security and just keeping people's information safe and things like that. So
Yeah. So in your side of things, that in transportation, it's mainly household goods, right?
yes.
Or well, I
Hmm.
guess some product also, but
Our company focuses on household goods movement,
right. And
interconnects.
yeah, and I understand that you have several tech clients, household names,
Yeah.
and
We do.
so again, I'm not interested in breaking the secret code here, but is business up or is business down? I mean, the number of reloads, and I know the reload shape and structure is changing into more
Hmm.
lump sum, younger people, different types of assignments rather than long-term gold-plated.
Hmm. Hmm. Business it's down from the previous 2 years. There was a little burst now because it's, spring, so people are preparing for the spring and summer move that should happen. I I've attended a couple of regional conferences in the last couple of weeks, and the theme sort of seems to be that this year is going to be a bit of a pause and a hold because I learned how many. I knew there were a few happening, but there are over like 65 countries holding national level elections this year, which explains a whole lot to me because everyone's waiting to see the outcomes of these elections and then I'm sure that there are plans in place, but I don't think anyone's going to take any actions until those elections are over and done.
So,
So,
so does that mean immigration?
means yes, primarily, but I think I mean, a lot of it, even for investment into countries, I think, companies are going to hold to see whether or not they're going to, further invest in certain locations, depending on, who's in government. So
interesting. Stephen Howard, what's your take on what you've just heard me and Sarah discuss?
Well, her last point's extremely valid in terms of those 55 national elections. And it's it's partly depending on if governments change, then policies will change. Policies may change regarding taxation. They may change regarding investment. They certainly may change regarding immigration and work permits and flexibility and things of those nature. So yeah, there's the clients I work with are not seeing much economic uncertainty around these elections, but they are seeing policy uncertainty. So the companies I'm consulting with these days are pretty much moving forward for the next 9 months on what they have in hand, but their plans as to what they want to execute in 2025, 2026 are kind of on the back burner, awaiting some of these election results that are, in many cases, are not obvious at all.
Ken, what's your take from the radical, view? The Radical is the name of the company. Why don't you explain a little bit to the audience out there about Radical?
Yeah, so Radical, I mean, we're a company focused on delivering epic work experiences for everyone. When we talk about epic work experiences, that's largely around people that are experiencing meaning, clarity, and connection in their day-to-day work experience. And meaning is not just about purpose, but it's about do people feel like they're having making impact through their work? They're able to get things accomplished. They're growing. Clarity is about clarity of where they're going with their organization, with their team, with the teams that they're working with. We were talking about, the functions and the silos in organizations. That's a big point where people are struggling with clarity. It's like, I know what I'm doing and what my team says I should be doing, but what we're doing, I don't know. It seems to be a big struggle. And then connection, we really have seen over and over again in our research and our work with companies that trusted connection is the rocket fuel of the work experience, that when it's there, all sorts of great things happen. And if it's not there or it starts to degrade, all sorts of bad things can happen for individuals, for teams, and for companies. So we're focused on helping individuals do that through technology products that will bring people together, match people based on interest and needs, give them insights, give team insights, et cetera, to help nudge those experiences along.
Ken,
one of the things,
yes.
just contextually, I would just jump in on the election piece. That there was a paper that we released at the end of the year about predictions for 2024, and one of the big predictions was the elections are going to overshadow a whole bunch this year. It's going to be on people's minds on a variety of levels, and I think certainly the policy decisions, what that might mean for immigration. I mean, if you saw the Wall Street Journal today, Trump has already started to mobilize a group to talk about mass deportations of immigrants. So there's going to be some mobility, and we'll see what that may mean. But I think one of the things we talked about more than policy is what all of this does to people's sense of trust and being able to connect and just being able to feel stable with their work when everything is so unsettling and everything is so vitriolic right now, and how that can undermine trust and connection in organizations, and how that presents such a leadership opportunity right now, as we're seeing some step up to that and some fail miserably in businesses and college campuses and et cetera right now.
Thank you. So the theme, I'm reading this from your 2024 people predictions, 49% of work productivity can be explained by an individual's work preferences, the relationships, direct experience, and personality. So how did you get all of that synthesis? I mean, how did you derive that understanding from that work?
Sure. So we did a study with a random sample of U.S. employees. So it wasn't global. But we asked all sorts of things about their work preferences, relationships. There's a personality assessment in the research that we did, and then asked all sorts of different angles on productivity, from self-report to the level of impact they're having, how many hours a week they're working, et cetera, et cetera. For the nerds out there, technically we ran a regression analysis looking at the relative weights of all these variables on these productivity outcomes, and that's how we get that 49%. So all these variables collectively can explain 49% of the variability in productivity data.
So I'm reading your yeah. Oh yes, Stephen, please.
Hey, Ken, that's really fascinating to me. Question for you. I recall some research pre-pandemic which showed that if a person had a good friend or close friend or someone they considered a close friend in their working environment, they tended to be more loyal to the organization. They were willing to put up with more crap. They were willing to, they wouldn't look for a job as quickly as those who don't have a so-called good friend, you know, kind of person you go to lunch with several times a week, I guess. Does your research still confirm that? Does it dispute that, or it wasn't even covered at all in your research?
Well, it's actually, there's several papers we've done in the last year. One of them was around, we call it the workplace trust imperative, and we looked at all these various relationships, and we did ask about work friends. I'm actually just pulling, you can find all this on our website.
Okay.
Work friends, currently about 40% of people have high trust relationships with work friends, which means you got a 60% opportunity to improve that. And then when we looked at the impact that work friends have, that they do actually have an impact on productivity. It's not the strongest of relationships on these outcomes, but it does matter significantly. What was interesting on the productivity research was that we showed and found this nonlinear relationship between trust and productivity. So like if you've got a baseline level of productivity that was about 80% or so, there's limited upside to having more trust, or having, you know, going from wherever you are to a high trust relationship. But on the downside, when it's not there, it's absolutely devastating. You see this like 40-point degradation in productivity, and that applies to work friends as well. And there's all sorts of things, like you said, you know, that goes into that, whether it's engagement or turnover. But we were particularly looking at the impact of relationships on productivity.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, and just as an aside, I mean, some of the ones that we found to be most important, not surprisingly, the manager is important, but there were some other ones like, you know, the degree that you have a relationship with executives or your skip manager up is really important for you. Mentors, there's this thing about distal relationships, not beyond your immediate team, that is very powerful. And I think work friends can actually apply to that as well. Because many times work friends might be, you know, someone else not on your team.
Can I just ask us to consider then what it would be like for a transferee or an employee going from one place where they may feel as part of an office or part of a team, where they may have that, you know, high trust, or, you know, that supportive relationship, going to a completely new place and sort of starting having to start all over again to build that type of relationship. And I think most people don't have even enough time in their locations. Their assignments aren't even long enough to come full circle around that. So thinking about how that, you know, impacts a transferee going to a completely new team, new environment, you know, new, to your point, new manager, all the things, you know, just asking us to consider that.
As one who's been an expatriate who was shipped 12,000 miles from their home base, I can tell you it has a huge impact. But it also has an upside, because it allows you to build a more extensive network within your organization if your organization is global. But I'd say the same thing in the US. If somebody was transferred from San Francisco to Miami, you know, they would still build a better network within their organization. So there's upsides and downsides like many things in life. But you're absolutely right, Sarah. That is a concern. And from my perspective as a leadership coach, mentor, it's something that organizations do not take in consideration, and they don't coach, they don't talk about it. It's just one of those things that you find out 5 months into your assignment, like, oh my gosh, my relationships back home are deteriorating, and I'm kind of lost. I'm not sure I'll have it. Where will I be when I come back? So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I do one more upside though. To your point, there are always upsides to things. Is that I think in situations like that, people learn to trust themselves a little bit more because
Yes.
they don't have someone that they can depend on or someone they can turn to. They can look inside themselves and maybe learn a little bit more about themselves and again trust themselves a little bit more.
Which goes back to Ken's research, which shows that my personality, if I trust myself and I'm now willing to do things more independently, I become less, what the research term is, conscientious about the rules of the organization. And so sometimes I don't fit when I go back in. I'm too much of an out not outcast, but on the outside, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny, Stephen. I was actually gonna draw on some of your research as well, because I think when you're a new person, you're not only dealing with, do you understand your own personality and maybe the personality of others? And by the way, you nailed it. Diligence or conscientiousness is the top personality driver of being able to form like many relationships, which I think is about, being able to understand rules and maybe unwritten rules, but also I think the diligence of following up with people, the diligence in doing good work, which is a foundation of keeping trust. But there's also things like the emotional stability, which I think, when you're in this new situation, can you remain calm and not freak out? But the thing, in addition to this, Stephen, I was going to draw on what you were talking about at the beginning of the call, was the social norms and the geographic cultural norms, and now you have to learn a new language and new customs, and following a rule in my home country is not following a rule in this new country.
Absolutely.
And so you have to have a lot of social awareness and being able to sort of have your antenna up on that, so that I think there's all sorts of challenges there, and I think people need help, right? People need
And you
help
have
to
to be willing,
navigate
you have to be willing to learn. I mean, I made a huge faux pas when I first moved to Singapore years ago, in that when I walked, I would kind of walk it with this kind of motion where I would kind of clap my hands or put my fist in the palm of my hand. And fortunately, after about 3 weeks, somebody pulled me aside and said, "Why do you do that?" And I said, "I don't know. It's just a nervous habit, I guess." And he said, "Well, please stop." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because to the Muslim community in Singapore and Malaysia, that was the equivalent of raising the middle finger to people." And I had absolutely no idea
Wow.
what a full
Wow.
pull I was making, because no one had trained me. No one had brought me
Wow.
aside and said, "Hey, be
Yeah.
careful about these kinds of body language."
Wow. That's a faux pas. Hey,
Same,
let's
same.
welcome Doug. Hi, Doug.
Hi,
Greetings,
Doug.
greetings to all again. Don't make it sounds like you guys are in a groove right now. I'm not going to interrupt unless I need to, but good seeing all the folks on the call today, and thanks again, Ed, for having me on.
Oh, well, I thank Sarah for helping lasso you. Yeah, well, thank you very much. So, Doug Gallardo and I have known each other 20 years or so, and he's just been hired by HSBC. Oh, that's a rehire, isn't it? But it's a different group.
It definitely is. I'm being called a boomerang, where
A boomerang.
exactly. Yeah, I guess by way
With
of
the
background.
emphasis on boomer, Doug,
Yeah,
or
yeah. I don't know. I don't know if to take that as a bad thing or a good thing, Sarah. So, but no, after a 3-year stint at another financial institution, and yes, I had previously been with HSBC for a good 15 years. I've been asked to come back in a similar role, however, with more responsibilities, connecting the dots. And, some of the comments, as soon as I just jumped on board, were basically a true testament to what this industry has been all about. And whether we realize it or not, we're all in the education business. We're all a traffic cop. We need to guide folks in the right direction from what we learned as we learn growing aboard. If you think it's tough from a cultural perspective, try being a financial institution that's probably one of the most scrutinized industries in the world, not only here in the US, but all over the world. So that's a challenge in itself.
So, to what extent are you working with Jody in that group?
Jody and I had worked together previously. Jody's more at a local level. My job is to connect those dots outside of the US to be as US centric as possible. So not only folks coming into the US, also folks relocating outside of the US. But if you've got someone, for example, from Taiwan to the UK, as opposed to phoning them blind to multiple folks and having 20 different contacts all over the world, I basically become that traffic cop to obtain the right resources needed in that part of the world to make sure that it's seamless. There's a live person, not an AI robot on the other side taking care of things to handhold these folks locally. And it goes back to the topic that everybody's been discussing: educating, handholding, assessing, because not everyone's needs are the same, and being able to guide these folks in the right direction. So hopefully, it's one less thing on their to-do list.
So, Doug, I want you to meet Ken Oehler, Dr. Ken Oehler, who's a people science thinker and doer and leader. And the name of the company that he's senior exec with right now is Radical. So you can just imagine that scope. One of the research, and I'm going to read this, Ken, from what you sent me earlier. Latest research outlines how AI-driven insights into one's own work style and the work styles of others can empower people and teams to navigate remote and in-office work, build and maintain trusted connections, advocate for performance, promotion, and pay, align and build distributed team effectiveness, to communicate and collaborate more effectively in hybrid teams, and to purposely build culture. So this is all about human experience. Ken.
Absolutely. The outcomes that you discuss from our paper on personality. I mean, this is really where we're going with our Radical Work app, is to be able to collect all this information about the people and teams that are working and coming together or need to come together, whether it's this person who's found themselves in a new country and need help understanding who do I need to get connected with quickly, who maybe isn't so obvious. Like, I'm in the immediate team I'm on, and like, where's this network that I need to start building, and how can I do that more effectively? Not just identifying them, but actually getting some nudges with the same sort of algorithms as Match.com uses to say, here's two people with some complementary profiles, which is nice. We kind of joke about it because in work, you actually want some polyamorous relationships, right? It's not just about finding a single match, but you want to find many matches that are going to be useful for you for different reasons, whether it's for mentoring or just finding that buddy or friend to help you understand the norms and culture of the organization and navigate, or understand the cross-functional nature of how work is done and how to build trust there. Some of the things you mentioned, and I'll just give you some of the highlights from the research. So like if you are navigating this new relationship, a couple things we found were, and the research bears this out, that some of the younger workers, Gen Z in particular, is not super comfortable with face-to-face in-office interactions, or maybe said differently, more comfortable with remote and digital interactions. And so how do people know that? And, not to sort of paint gross stereotypes, what about the Gen Z who actually does want to come into the office and prefers face-to-face? Do you know that about them? And are helping people understand these things about each other and knowing the personality or work style predispositions. And if you've got this information and using AI-driven apps to nudge people and teams, it's like, hey, you've now met Doug, but do you understand how often he likes to come into the office? And then if so, what days might you find him there? And I'm just making these things up about you, Doug. I hope you don't mind. And you better
okay.
know that Doug is really high on the conscientiousness factor. So you better come to him with a good plan and not just a free form conversation or whatever that may be. That these things that you can inadvertently quickly destroy trust or undermine trust upon first meetings. And how do you nudge people with these things that are just sort of friendly things that tend to be like good coaches and good mentors do this for people. And I think AI has the ability to do this much more quickly. And that's just an example of one thing of like someone entering a new office environment with new people.
So Doug, I didn't want to entrap you into this conversation. I just wanted to keep the momentum going. Stephen Howard is an author of 22 books on leadership, and he's working on 23 right now. And the 23 is really interesting to me, and it should be for all of us involved in global mobility because, Stephen, it's about how people outside the business people who want to do business with people inside the U.S., there's some stuff to learn about, and vice versa.
Yeah, the book is titled "Partnering Successfully with American Firms and Business People," and it talks about understanding the American business culture, why certain things are so important. Like for instance, one thing, and I've lived outside the United States now for most of my adult life. So like 33 years I've lived outside the US and worked outside the US. And one thing that people always complain to me about Americans is that, hey, how come they never stay an extra day? How come, we invite them to come, take a day tour, come see our country, understand our culture a bit better. And I have to explain to them that, for Americans mostly who are on a business trip, a company paid business trip, they don't want to be seen back home as taking a couple vacation days on company time and running up the hotel bill so they can understand their partners outside. But people in Mexico, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, even Japan, they take offense to that sometimes, particularly if you've scheduled a 3 or 4, say a 4-day meeting and it ends after 3 days. Well, the Americans are like all on their phone, rebooking, get on the flight, get home as soon as I can. And other cultures saying, where's our relationship? What do you know? And so these are things that the book talks about for non-Americans to understand a bit more about what American business practices is, what the American business culture is like, and how to be adaptable and flexible without giving your own culture away, but how to adapt to when you want to be successful with an American partner. So,
Sarah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to make a slight joke. All of you who are in mobility and international assignments can buy bulk copies of the book and send it to your non-American customers. So thank you.
You bet. You bet. And I welcome you to the TV show when you're ready. You and Ali are ready. So, Sarah, the recent disaster of that ship sliding into the Key Bridge in Baltimore, that really must be impacting your industry.
It did for the first, I would say, a couple of weeks. I think it's kind of smoothed over. Things get rerouted pretty quickly thanks to technology. And those changes happen pretty rapidly. They just sort of reroute ships for us. But last night we just sent out another news flash just ahead of this call. But Houston had a pretty severe and fast-moving storm yesterday, so. These are the things that we have zero control over. We can just share the best information that we have and in a timely manner and work together to make, to resolve and just find solutions, problem solve and rerouting, I do really strongly believe that technology allows us to be way more adaptable, flexible, dynamic,
So when a disaster hits like that, is it a force majeure, or who pays for the extra time and work involved?
Well, really, honestly. I would say that our partnerships with the shipping lines are pretty strong. And so there's an understanding on all sides that, again, a lot of this is out of any, one person's control. And so we just really work together to get resolutions, right? They also don't want containers and, ships sitting at port either. They want to keep things moving as well. So there really is a partnership and working together there. ultimately, Ed, when containers fall into the sea, that's a very extreme situation. And, I'm sure those are taking, on a case by case basis. But I can't say that it happens often that there are any major issues like that. It's more of delays. Unfortunately, sometimes the client does end up paying, unfortunately, it's part of the sort of risk that you take when you, embark on this journey. But we try to minimize that as much as possible. And just, like I said, keeping information flowing is super important, and keeping people updated and communication and setting expectations and things like that.
So I know you're not an insurance expert, but I'm just wondering, is there some kind of casualty insurance that is offered? Like when we go on a business trip, we take the insurance. God forbid something happens.
Yeah, I mean, so every shipment that we send out is insured. It depends on each individual client, though. Some of them self-insure, and some of them we insure, and there are different policies in place for those type of things. As
Great.
I mentioned,
Okay.
it's very rare that things don't get settled sort of amicably and to everyone's benefit.
So, Sarah, I know you're not a weather person, a meteorologist, but what about seeding the clouds above the Panama Canal and forcing some rain so that
Oh,
Phil?
I'm going to answer you personally, not as on behalf of my company. I do admire science and nature, and I think that, there are a lot of benefits to having information. I don't think you need to act on all of the information that you have sometimes. You just need to know it and not act on it. And I think that's enough sometimes. So that's my personal answer to that question.
That's a very good way of telling me to stop asking stupid questions.
No, it's not a stupid question. I mean, there may be people who believe strongly the opposite. Like, no, this needs to be done because, XYZ reason, and they're trying to solve for a problem, So I understand both sides of that. Like I said, my answer is completely personal on my own.
Or you get a Dubai situation where they see the clouds and the airport gets split in 3 days.
And they're not built to manage that. So they have no idea what to do in situations like that, So
be
Yeah, it's
careful what you
interesting.
wish for.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, I thank you guys for being on this program. It was designed to be a sort of news briefing or get to know prior to the live event May 29 at EY Global Center. And we're going to do this again because several people said they wanted to be involved, but they couldn't because of conflicts and busy schedules. So we're going to do this again on May 22. Same time, 8 a.m. California time. And you're all welcome to come back. Others said they will try to be involved in that news briefing because they couldn't make this one. And the event on May 29 will not have a virtual component at the request of EY, and they're paying for the meeting, so we'll do whatever they want. And that's why this is a good idea to build up awareness and communications between people. So, Doug, I know it's been years since we've been together in a meeting room. I invite people to use the chat thing on the bottom and send your phone number or website and intro yourself, because that's the ROI of our global TV talk show, is connections that you can explore tomorrow or in the future. So, Doug, you help ultra high net worth individuals as well as corporate nomads, international business people to find mortgages, move money around?
All of the above. I think, like I said before, I think because of sitting in probably one of the most scrutinized industries in the world, it's often assumed that if someone is from a country other than their own, that these individuals just walked off a plane with a suitcase full of cash. Where, the corporate individual, we know who they are, we know who they work for, they've been vetted by governments for visas, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just knowing the customer. So to answer your question, yeah, other than those that are living and working outside of their home country, those that may be interested in investing in other parts of the world as well. Just had a call this morning with an individual that was looking to purchase property here in the U.S. Has no connection to the U.S. However, with the connectivity and the dots around the map for the bank, we're able to facilitate a lot of those things, which normally, through a local bank, for example, they would probably be asked for information that they would not have, and probably be scrutinized, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, to answer your question, anyone that's living and working outside of their home country, that's usually the traffic cop mentality that we take and try to go guide folks in the right direction where the bank could be of benefit to them as well.
So just to review, Doug, HSBC in London has hosted my global HR business meeting three times now, and they've liked it sufficiently to invite me to come back. So in late September, we're going to be doing it again at HSBC in London. I work with a group that's head up by Mr. Ricardo. I'll leave last name out, and directly with Kulvinder and the India diaspora group. That's where that cell that I'm working with is located.
Not a problem. You must be doing something right, Ed, because either that or security is lacking at each one of those locations where you just finished mentioning it.
No, I'm not going to tell you how many times I've been frisked. No, it's great. It's just
but good to hear. And anything that I can do to help on this end, again, that's my task, is to get more involved with even local organizations, and how do we connect those dots around the map where you can leverage those things in other parts of the world. So I'm glad to hear that you're working. I do know Ricardo as well.
He's a very, very cool guy.
Very, very nice guy.
Yeah.
And like I said before, even though I'd been absent from the bank for close to 3 years, coming back was almost like a high school reunion. There were a lot of familiar faces and names there. So there's a lot of continuity there as well. So definitely look forward to hopefully doing more things like this as well.
So a bit of the news. Also in late September, just around the same time as the next London event will be, I'm going to be doing my first Scandinavia meeting, which will be live in Malmo, Sweden, which is just across the bridge from Copenhagen. And I know Maersk is there, and other shipping companies, and we're already starting our networking with the help of direct introductions to people in the Copenhagen market, as well as across Scandinavia. And we have some people coming in from Germany and from UK and Switzerland up to the Malmo event. My host partner there is a senior HR leader based in Malmo. Her name is Eva. I'll be doing introductions more formally in the coming weeks. But she has already introduced me to a number of practicing corporate HR, and another service provider based in Stockholm is on my advisory board, and she is already introducing me to some people, including a leader in Hitachi Energy, who's agreed to come and speak live. So my friend Eva worked under contract for an extended period of time at the senior level of HR for a company you probably already know, Air Liquide. And they have a major facility in Malmo. And so somebody from that company will also be on our faculty in Malmo. The exact date will be announced in the next week or so. And that meeting will be a virtual as well as in person. So we'd like to build a global audience for that. That would be great. Now, I'm also going to use that same format, this same format of a news update in advance, bringing some people and ideas together to build up audience awareness of an event, just like we're doing for the EY event. We're going to be doing the same in a series of broadcasts about Malmo. And as we grow our presence in Latin America, we'll do that, as well as in Asia Pacific. So thank you very much for listening to me and for being on this program. I'll send you, each of you, I'll send you a copy of this recording later today. Thank you for being on Global
Wonderful.
HR.
Nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you all. Thank you again, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank you.